That fire, water, shelter is always a great conversation, because if you ask 10 guys what's the priority, you'll probably get a whole bunch of different answers on each one of those. So easy looking at that. Shelter, there's 3 different levels to shelter. What I'm wearing, would you consider that shelter? Right? If I'm dressed appropriately for the weather, do I need to build a shelter? All right, or can I just survive wearing what I have? The other thing too is if I'm looking at shelter and fire versus water or food, I can go quite a bit of time without water and without food, depending on the environment. So is it a favorable environment or an unfavorable environment? Favorable environment, something like today, nice, bright, sunny. It's a little on the cool side, but it's still a nice day out. So do I have to really worry about sheltering away from my environment? No, not really. Well, okay, now I can spend the time in order to build a fire. Because on a day like today, if I just have a fire, that fire is going to keep me warm. And like I mentioned before, going back into that psychological aspect of it, right? Getting that fire going, how much of a positive influence on my situation is that going to affect me? So now I can look at it as going into that psychology part. It keeps me going, keeps me productive and active. And fire heats you 3 times while you're collecting the wood, while you're processing the wood, while you're burning the wood. So if I have a fire going, I'm generally going to stay nice and warm. And then I can improve my situation from there. So do I need to build a shelter? Or is it nice enough that just that fire is going to keep me in a situation? How long am I going to be out there, right? If I'm aiming to stay outside for a prolonged period of time, or before I expect rescue to come and look for me, then I'm probably going to improve my situation by building a shelter. The other thing that I can use a fire for is going into signal fires. Right? I get this nice fire going in order to be able to keep me warm, but then I see a lot of, say, choppers or planes going over that I might think is search and rescue. Right? Well, now I'm going to take a whole bunch of green branches and I'm going to throw that on top, and that's going to send up a signal fire. So I can utilize that fire in a whole bunch of different ways. I can also use it in order to be able to boil and purify my water as well. And then there's shelter. The only reason why I wouldn't prioritize fire over shelter is if my environment is unfavorable. So if I'm in a really bad snowstorm, am I really going to be able to build a fire in high winds and snow, or high winds and rain? No, not a chance. So this is where I change the strategy around and prioritize that shelter. And shelter could be either what I'm wearing, my clothing. It could be a commercial shelter or something that's already man-made. So whether or not I'm going into a building of some sort, or I have a tent that I can utilize and put up fairly quickly, or then getting into a natural built shelter. So something like a cave, or a fallen tree underneath a pine boughs is also something that I can utilize as a natural shelter. Or do I need to actually build it? I don't have those resources, and now I have to be able to grab a couple tree branches, lean them up against a tree or a cliffside, and build that lean-to or A-frame style shelter in order to get me away from that environment that is going to put me at harm.